Mom's blood on the outside of this uterus goes through tiny little jets, and it circulates around inside this pocket, and it swirls around these chorionic villi. Mom's blood never touches with baby's blood, and mom's blood, carrying all of the oxygen and nutrients, are picked up by the surrounding cells of that chorionic villi, picks up the oxygen, picks up the nutrients, transfers it to baby's blood, and it goes back to baby's body, and baby stays alive, and it begins to grow, and it begins to develop. Now, here's another little tidbit. I hope this doesn't run us too long. What's interesting here is this. Mom's blood is carrying oxygen. Baby's blood wants oxygen. If they both had the same type of hemoglobin, or the same type of blood, they would have the same affinity or desire for oxygen. And oxygen molecules would never leave mom's red blood cells and go to baby's red blood cells. Baby has a different type of hemoglobin, different type of blood circulating around its body called fetal hemoglobin. And it has a higher affinity for oxygen than mom's blood, completely different type. So if there's an oxygen molecule on mom's blood cell and it runs up against this chorionic villi where fetal hemoglobin is seeking it, baby's blood says, I want that oxygen. And it takes it. And it carries it around. It goes up to baby's body and it brings back what? Carbon dioxide. Well, baby's blood has a lower affinity than mom's blood, and her blood has a higher affinity for carbon dioxide, and mom's blood sees a carbon dioxide molecule and says, I want that. And it does an exchange. And soon after baby is born, through a process in its body, it changes out all of its hemoglobin from fetal hemoglobin to adult type hemoglobin after it's born. And amazing. I wonder how that evolved through all process of trial and error. And here's a picture of this placenta. Here are those chorionic villi. Here's a villi. And of course, since it's been sliced, all the blood's been mixed together. But in real life, all of these red blood cells of mom would be swirling around outside of this. And baby's little blood cells, here's one inside. One of those chorionic villi would be going inside there. And they're just bathed in mom's blood. Okay, here's a quote. The placenta is a unique and complex organ. Biological existence is brief. Its structural elements are heterogeneous. Meaning what? Meaning it's made up from genetic material from two different individuals. Made up from moms and babies. Like the fetus, the placenta consists of tissue derived from two different parental genotypes. It produces protein and steroid hormones that regulate the physiologic activities of pregnancy. Concurrently, it acts as the fetal lung, kidneys, intestine, and liver. It's becoming evident that an immunological role for this organ may be of paramount importance for the successful maintenance of mammalian pregnancy right there. In other words, not only is it going to do all of these things for the baby, the lung, the kidneys, and everything else, but it's going to help modulate mom's immune response so that the baby can grow. Well, here's a little picture of a cell. And this is a little basic immunology here. This is a cool photo. Every cell, most cells have a bi-layer. There's two layers to the cell, an outside layer and an inside layer. And this is a scanning electron picture where they froze the cell, and it froze the outside layer, and they are able to break off a tiny fraction of the outside layer. And what you see when you break it all off is you see all of these bumps. You see that cell is just completely riddled with the bumps, and they're all pores. They're channels, they're the markers on the outside of their cell. They do all kinds of functions. They're like little radio antennas sending out signals to other cells. The cell is just bristling with all of these functions on it that you never see, but when you break it open and you look inside, you see all of these things inside of a cell. And here's I'll skip this. Let's skip some human immunology. Ooh, let's skip that. All right. Well, let's get it. Actually, that's a cool photo. It really is good. It shows how all these cells develop, but I want to get you guys out before midnight. So, the placenta acts as a physiological barrier, just a plain barrier to maternal immune attack. Well, let's look at this cell here, this slide. It says, other immunological properties have been ascribed to cells derived from the placenta. Trophoblastic tissue serves as an anatomic barrier between the fetal and maternal tissues and thereby serves as the first line of defense against maternal anti-fetal alloimmunity, meaning this: mom's body wants to destroy that new little embryo, and the placenta itself is just an actual physical barrier keeping mom's attack cells away from the baby. Maternal lymphocytes, that's another name for mom's white cells, sensitized to fetal antigens, could be excluded specifically. That's very, very interesting. The placenta knows exactly which of those attack cells have been energized to attack the baby, and it keeps those specific ones out. Those specific ones are gone. Keep that thought in mind, because it's going to become important later. The placenta also produces substances that suppress mom's immune attack. It says this: circulating alpha-fetoprotein, that's just another name for a protein, placental ovarian steroids, that's just another steroidal genic like testosterone or estrogen, protein hormones and antibodies have widely different concentrations in pregnancies. These factors have been proposed as naturally occurring immunosuppressive factors. And these substances, it says they're taken together, could exert a potent immunosuppressive effect on the fetal-maternal interface, where they are made and maintained at high levels throughout most stages of the pregnancy. So translated, not only does the placenta provide an actual physical barrier to moms, but it's making all of these long-worded substances that suppress mom's immune system, not throughout her entire body, but right there in the uterus, and it says they're maintained throughout the entire pregnancy. If lacking, the result would be death of the embryo. So you need that placenta right from the beginning, and otherwise the baby can never, never develop. The physical barrier and the immunosuppressive barrier is what the placenta does in order for that pregnancy to be maintained. But wait, as there's still more. For only $19.95, you get an additional thing right here. There's a balanced maternal response to the highly erosive placenta tissue that appears to be invulnerable, as other medical texts have said, to maternal control. What is that saying? I'll even explain my own slide. As that placenta begins to attach to mom's uterus, it secretes enzymes